Hello everybody and welcome to another tutorial video. This one's going to be about Case 1 carrier ops in the F-18. I might do a video about the Tomcat, but it's a little bit different, but most of the same. Uh, but I have to practice that really to be able to do a tutorial on it. I've been practicing the Hornet and I'm much better at doing it in the Hornet than the Tomcat. Anyway, so Case 1, what are Case 1 conditions? Case 1 is when the cloud ceiling is no lower than 3,000 feet and visibility around the carrier is no less than 5 nautical miles. Um, Typically, comms are done zip lip, so there's no communications. It's just hand signals and everything else on the flight deck. And in other conditions, Case 2 and Case 3, when there's less visibility, there is certainly more talking on the radio because you can't see, and there's therefore a much higher risk of accidents. Anyway, this, as you can see on the screen, I have this handy kneeboard page, which is basically the entire manual for the Hornet, just in kneeboard. If I can find the link for it, I will put that in the description. If I can't, you can find it on the DCS website. But anyway, so for Case 1, what you are going to be doing for the departure is you start whatever the base recovery course, the BRC, or the carrier's heading that it's going is. When you launch on cats 1 and 2, so they go from right to left or from starboard to port. 1, 2 are the bow cats, and then 3 and 4 are the waist cats. So on the bow cats, you'll turn to the right for your clearing turn. On the waist cats, you'll turn to the left. You're going to go without exceeding 30 degrees angle of bank. You're going to be turning right or left respectively. 20 degrees offset from the carrier's course, and then once you hit 20 degrees off, immediately turn back left or right respectively and parallel the BRC. So if the carrier is going due north and you're on cat 1, for example, as soon as you launch, you're going to be turning to heading 020, and then as soon as you get to that, turn back to parallel 00 and heading due north, just because you want to include that so they can launch a lot of aircraft quickly and it limits the possibility of mid-airs. Also, you're going to fly at 500 feet off the deck and at 300 knots until you're 7 nautical miles out from the carrier, and then you can turn unrestricted climb to the course wherever you're going for your mission. And the waist cats 3 and 4, like I said, same thing, except you're turning to the left. So for the Marshall stack, what I typically do, I'll announce inbound at 50 nautical miles out, put the tail hook down just so I don't have to worry about it later. And you will stack up. It's a 5 nautical mile diameter circle. Position 1, you can see on the right here, is right overhead the carriers. 2 is here. 3 and then 4. You're going to be at 250 knots because you're trying to conserve fuel because you might be waiting in the stack for a little while. Typically, the lowest aircraft, the lower aircraft in the stack are at 2,000 feet, and then they're stacked up at 1,000-foot intervals above that. And you can see the angle of bank here and here for what you want to fly, just to kind of maintain that circle. It's a little bit more at position 4 because the carrier is moving forward, so you have to keep that pattern going around it. Typically, though, it's not that often that you're going to be in this situation because most people don't marshal, and they'll give you, if you're the first one to announce inbound, they'll give you the signal to commence immediately. But if you weren't, you were actually stacking up and doing this realistically, you'd be orbiting, then they would say your signal is Charlie. So if your side number is like 413, they would say basically like 413, your signal is Charlie or something like that. I don't remember exactly what. And then you will keep flying the circle until you get to position 3, a beam from the carrier, and then you will go 30 degrees offset from that heading and then descend to 800 feet and accelerate to 350 knots. So in this case, we have the BRC of the carrier, the base recovery course, is 302 degrees. So the reciprocal of that is 122. And then your offset here is going to be 152 degrees. And then you kind of just eyeball this, just practice. And then you want to come along here, usually about 0.1, 0.2 miles a beam on the starboard side of the carrier, so you're not overflying it exactly. when you're entering the pattern. And you can see that there's on the MFCD, you can see, or on the HSI, you can see the course that you have set and how far you are offset from that, how far to the side. And I'll show you that once we're in the plane. So you're going to fly 800 feet, 350 knots, slightly offset on the starboard side of the carrier. Once you get past the bow, you are going to do a brake to the left, a little bit descending because you want to be 600 feet on the downwind. This is where, for me, I differ slightly from what you're technically supposed to do, but this is what works for me and gets me pretty much set up perfectly every time, because that's something you really need to do. Is if you get the first part consistent, then you can really focus on the hardest part at the end, which is flying, turning at the 90 and then turning onto into the groove and on final. So what I will do, throttle's idle, a little bit descending in the brake, and I'll pull exactly 2 Gs at 250 knots, gear down, flaps to full, speed brake out just so I can slow down faster, and then you want to trim onto angle of attack. Try to use as much trim as possible so you're not really using pitch inputs, you're just using the throttle to adjust your angle of attack and pitch and altitude. And you want to level off on the downwind at 600 feet. And usually angle of attack varies slightly depending on weight, but it's usually about 144 knots. For the, I think it's 8.8 degrees angle of attack. Once I get to the stern and I get past that and I can look to the left and see the stern of the carrier, then I'll start my turn, my left turn to get into the groove. It's usually 27 to 30 degrees. If you're at 1.25 miles, which if you did the first part right, you should be at approximately 1.25 miles, nautical miles, that is. It's usually about 30 degrees. Angle of bank will set you right up on the groove. I know that's a lot of information that I gave you quickly. Once we get into the jet, I'll go through that again slower as we get to those spots. This is a better maybe graph if you want to pause this and study this a bit. But it's basically just everything that I said. So now we're going to get into the actual jet, so I'll be right back when we are. Okay, so here we are in the jet. What we're going to do first is we'll come into active pause, and then we're going to set up our TACAN and our radios. So the frequency for the carrier is, in this mission, is 127,500. So we'll just scroll over here, set this to M for manual, type 127,500, press enter. We'll come over here to TACAN. TACAN for this carrier is 73 X-ray, so enter on into X-ray or Yankee, whatever band it's on. This is X-ray. ILS is channel 13, so press enter and then on again. You can see down here on our HSI we have TACAN and ILS that now popped up because you put those in. You can see our distance and bearing to the TACAN, so we'll box this, TACAN and ILS. I'm going to silence this. I'm just going to get this off the HUD to declutter it a bit. We'll set this one to checklist, and we'll set this one NPD to HUD. That's pretty typical. This one is usually either set to checklist, or you can set it to the flight control systems page, the FCS page. I'm going to set it to checklist. One other thing, max trap weight for the Hornet is 33,000 pounds. If you have stores, we don't. We just have a CADM 9X or a CADM 9M over there. But what you want to do normally is dump fuel. So I'll usually set bingo to 6,000 pounds, dump fuel down to that. But it also depends if you have any bombs or anything, you have to account for that weight and get this down to 33,000 pounds before we trap. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to contact the carrier, which is the George Washington, and say inbound. I typically do this maybe 50 nautical miles out. So actually I'll do that and I'll wait until then. It doesn't have to be exactly that. So I'll just do that now. But I'll start flying towards it. I'll set our autopilot on too. So ATC, George Washington, inbound, and we're going to get a bunch of information pretty quickly.
Marshall, 309. March Mops 166, hold 60. Angels 20, state 5.9.
3090, weather's weather is visibility 10 plus mile. Scattered clouds at above 10,000, altimeter is 2993. Case 1 recovery, expected BRC 11, report see me at 10.
Alright, so we just got a whole lot of information, so I'm going to pause this here.
309.
So 309er is our side number there. And they told us that our altimeter, you want to set this as 2993. They also told us that our BRC is going to, or the carrier's BRC is 011. So we'll enter this here. And you can see down here, this is our course select, and this is the distance offset from that I was talking about earlier, which is a useful feature that will be useful once we get close to the boat. One other thing we're going to do right here, we're going to put our hook down, just because we always want to do that right when we announce inbound. Other information they said case 1 recovery, and what else did they say? They said visibility is more than 10 plus miles, and they gave us a cloud ceiling, which I don't remember exactly what it was, but basically means we got nice conditions. It's a visual approach. We don't need instruments, but I like to have TAC in and ILS on anyway. So yeah, so we'll keep flying here, and the next thing we're gonna have to do with comms is this one, see you at 10. So once we're 10 nautical miles out, we'll say that. But I'm gonna keep flying towards the carrier, and then I will come back once it's time to do something else. Actually, before I do that, for our landing checklist, we want to make sure that I have our dispenser off. We're gonna have our harness and our locked and our ejection seat armed. Normally you do that checklist when you're on the downwind, and you probably go through that again, but I like to get things set up here so I don't forget. And we have dispensers off, harness is locked, anti-skid is on, hook is down. So all we have to do now is wheels and flaps, and we're not going to be doing that yet, obviously. So like I said, I'll be right back once we're close to the carrier. Okay, so we are about 16 miles out from the carrier. All I've done is flown in that same direction, but descended down to like 10,000 feet. I'm going to start descending more now. But one thing I want to do is, after we set our course, what I didn't say is we got some different symbology on our HUD a little bit. So we used to have a little line up here on our compass that showed the bearing to the carrier. You can actually see the carrier down there. But now that it's changed, we have these two dots in this line, which indicates the course of the carrier. If we fly to line the top of the vertical velocity vector, the velocity vector with these dots, then we will be flying perfectly perpendicular to our course, which is what I want to do, just so we can get lined up on it, instead of just trying to guess. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to come left a bit, and I'm going to descend, and I'm going to start slowing down. So put this out. I also forgot to say, make sure you have master arm on safe. So we're going to come over here. I think our course, our heading is going to be 281 to be perpendicular to it. Yeah. We'll fly here, descend a bit. We'll stay around 350 knots. That's our boat over there. So I just want to get down to probably 2,000 feet or so. It doesn't really matter, because I'm not going to be doing the full-on Marshall stack. And eventually we're going to be down at like 800 feet. You can also adjust the scale of this if you want to. So we'll turn here. You can see we're now flying back a little bit. As you can see, we're like 0.4 of a mile offset to the left. We want to correct that, and I'm going to aim for about 0.1 over to the right. Yeah, so that's pretty good. Keep descending here. Make sure you have your radar altimeter on. We're going to turn that on now. You can use barrel, but I'm gonna use, you know what, I'll just use barrel. That's fine. So, okay, we're within 10 miles, so we're gonna compute, say, see you at 10.
See you at 10.
Update state, switch down.
309, state 3.7.
Whenever they say state, by the way, they're talking about fuel state. So this said 3.5, I think, or whatever it is. So that's all it is. If it was like 6,800 pounds, we say 6.8, it was, and so on. Come a little bit over the left here. Slow down a little bit more, double check cooks down, have all that stuff set.
Tower 309. Overhead Angels 1.5. State 3.6. 309. Tower, roger. BRC 11. Signal is Charlie.
So that there, if we were doing the Marshall stack, it doesn't really matter because, but as you see, we got within 5 nautical miles. It was basically, and we set our altitude. So normally we would be going into the Marshall stack there, and then if there were other aircraft below us, they would get sent down, and eventually they would say that 309er tower, roger, BRC 011 signal is Charlie, and then we could do our whole rotating pattern to get down here. What I will talk through just one more time, I'll go into active pause actually. Just gonna cycle through all of this whole entire manual until I get to what I need here. So what I'm gonna go through again just quickly. So our heading, or the BRC, the carrier, is 011, actually, and so we are going to be paralleling that, as you can see, 800 feet. We're almost down there, 350 knots for about at that. Once we get past the bow, we're gonna, if we had wingmen, we would say flight kiss off, and then that means that we're gonna peel off. They're gonna set their interval. It's about 15 to 17 seconds or so, and then they'll break, and then the number 2 will break, and then the number 3, and so on and so forth. Just counting so that you set up that interval, so you have enough time to land, taxi off the flight deck, and then before the next one comes in. So we are going to be doing a break slightly descending, and pulling 2 Gs with our throttle at idle, 250 knots, gear and flaps down, flaps to full, and then coming around to parallel the BRC, which is going to be 191. So let's do that. Point of flying by here so we can check and make sure that the deck is green and there's nothing obstructing like that, because we can get there a little fast. Actually, my speed breaks out before I turn. That's pretty good. So we'll go idle here, roll to the left, pulling 2 Gs. It's a little high. If you go a little high, then you're going to want to reduce that and try and compensate for that a bit. We're at about 600 feet. We'll level out here. We're a little fast. – 250 knots, gear down, flaps to full. I have keybinds for that, 191. Hello BRC. We're a little far out actually. Farther out than I would like to be. We'll do speed brake out. Slow down where we need to be. So we're gonna, basically that's okay, we just need to not do as much of a bank. This notch that's just there, that's about 30 degrees, so we need to be a bit to the left, be at like 26, 27. Stay on AOA. descend a bit. I waited a little too long, so I'm not going to descend too much because we want to just kind of make sure. And the more that you do this, you'll kind of be able to know if you'll get a sense for how much your bank angle, you kind of get a feel for it and the altitude, and so I think I'm a little bit low here actually. Maybe not. We'll keep this turn coming. Yeah, we're definitely low, so we want to get that meatball, the yellow, right in the middle. Just keep adjusting our bank angle and our power so that we can stay on glide slope or get on glide slope even. So we're lined up here, 3/4 of a mile, call the ball.
Order ball, 3.3.
Okay, I boltered. That is okay. So what we're going to do with the bolter is we are going to... That's actually useful, so then I can actually talk about this because I forgot to. Because you will bolter a lot. And basically what you're going to want to do, climb up to 600 feet, turn right to parallel the BRC, so that's 011. Once we are up at that and at 600 feet, level out, and then we're going to do 30 degrees bank angle to the left. So do that. Slow down a bit so we can stay on angle of attack and not get too high up here. At about 600 feet, paralleling the BRC, power, some more trim. Come left here. 30 degrees angle of bank. And we'll just keep this going. So I made some mistakes going into that. I was a little too fast in the pattern, so I didn't pull enough G's, and I was too far away from the carrier. Didn't do an excellent job compensating for it. Once I was in the groove, I was low and then overcorrected and then got a bit too high right at the end, and as a result was too high, touched the deck but went over the wires and missed them. So I had to do a bolter pattern, which is unfortunate, but it happens. Because now we're set up better, because now we're 1 1/4 miles abeam, which is where I wanted to be last time. Whoa. So you can see the stern almost. We'll just wait a couple more seconds until we can. Yep, there it is. So come left, about 30 degrees angle of bank. About 1 degree with the down the vertical with the velocity vector. So about here, so keep this going. Keep checking on when the carrier is. Make adjustments as needed. A little high, because I was not descending enough. Overcorrect too much. Yeah, I overcorrected. We're a little too low now. So just climb a little bit, keep this going, keep making adjustments, constant little throttle movements and stick inputs. Don't want to get too low, don't want to get too slow. Right here, get lined up in the groove, 3/4 mile on the ball.
309, order ball, 2.9.
As soon as you touch the deck, you want to go full burner. And there we go. That's perfect past 4-wire. There is a grading system. It's kind of complicated. But actually, now we're going to go hook up just over here. Unlock this. Fold our wings, so they'll start coming up, flaps up. Soon, we're going to be getting actual aircraft directors on the flight deck that are going to taxi us out of the parking area to the cats. Can't wait for that. But at the moment we don't have that. So anyway, As I was saying about grading system, I'm just gonna park it here. There is a system that's kind of complicated. I think I have a sheet that has all of them somewhere in here. Maybe I just do in the Tomcat, I forget. Oh, here it is. Okay. If you want to pause this and study that, I don't have it all memorized, but the best thing you're looking for is this one, underscore OK, underscore perfect pass, or any of the OKs is good. 3-wire is the optimum. I caught a 4-wire. It's not too bad, a little bit high. It's alright though. But anyway, I know I gave you a lot of information. It is really difficult. I was practicing this a lot yesterday, and I was actually honestly surprised I did well. And I didn't do as well today because that was the first pattern I've flown today. So it's tricky. It's a perishable skill. You really got to practice it. I would recommend practicing the same pattern, just doing touch and goes at like an airfield. But practice makes perfect. It really does. And it'll never be perfect, but practice makes improvement, I guess. Anyway, I'm rambling as I typically do. As I said, I hope you found this informative, helpful, useful. Consider subscribing. I would really genuinely appreciate that, and I'll see you in the next video.